Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, DevOps TV, and we're here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit London, UK, 2018, day one, and joined by our longtime friend, now the CIO.
CTO.
CTO, excuse me, of Hiscox, Jonathan Fletcher. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So Jonathan, since the last time we spoke, which was probably a dozen last year here, I think, at that time, you were interim CTO, I believe, and now, of course, you're permanent. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well deserved. I thought they'd be a fool not to hire you, to tell you the truth. But not to make you blush or get embarrassed, but you have a long history of leading Hiscox DevOps journey. Geez, I think the first time I met you was probably 4.5 years ago,
Yep.
Jonathan,
Yep.
and you were already well along the path then. And interestingly, as Hiscox DevOps journey transformation has progressed, so has your career as a leader within the organization. And so I wanted to talk today about leadership as it relates to DevOps. And well, first of all, I've said enough for now. What thoughts on DevOps leadership and how to be an effective leader within a DevOps sort of environment?
So I think some of the skills are not DevOps specific. I think a good leader is a good leader is a good leader.
Yep.
However, I think with DevOps, especially with the traditional enterprise has been around 100 and something years, there are unique challenges around DevOps, and I think it's the why. If I said in my presentation earlier, I think the most valuable question you can ask yourself is, what's the need for change? Why would you do it? Because everything else off the back of that, if you capture the why, you can capture the R and Y, and it makes your life a lot easier. So I think from a DevOps point of view, there are so many stakeholders to please. There are so many. It's the business, right? How are you going to reorganise? It's the people on the shop floor. It's my peers. It's my manager, right? All of those people have to be bought into a vision. So if you can eloquently explain the why we're doing this, then you're halfway there. So I think for any people that are kind of starting, that a lot of it, I think traditionally was a sort of a floor up, grassroots movement in a lot of organisations. I think certainly more in the enterprise, it's more of a top down or a very different approach. So I think from a DevOps leadership point of view, you've got to have the right skills to be talked to the hardcore techies, the business, as well as sort of senior stakeholders. And I think that's the unique blend for DevOps leadership.
Yep. And I think you right off the bat, Jonathan, what you said about leadership is leadership, absolutely dead on, whether we're talking about DevOps or anything else. But there are also some unique DevOps characteristics, if you will, that we need. I think one of the things we were talking off camera is I see in the community, there's always been a bit of this kumbaya in DevOps, right, where we're all going to get together and do the right thing. And in terms of DevOps leadership, it manifests itself in this feeling of, look, I've got a good team. I'm going to tell them what the goal is. I'm going to empower them to succeed, which oftentimes means giving them budget and freedom, and set them loose. And it's up to them to chart their path, because that's kind of, at the heart of DevOps. And then there's another school of thought, right, that says, that doesn't often end well. Where are you on that?
A bit of both. So I look at it like parenting, right? Your parents went to work to give you funding so you could go to school and you could eat, and they create that thing. And it's the same with a leader. You're going out and getting budget and giving back to the team. My parents created boundaries for me to operate in, but said largely sort of, if you exhibit these behaviours and you do the right thing, then we're not going to tell you what to do. That's quite like leadership, but also there's come on son, you've overstepped the mark, then you've gone too far. So I think, like you said, DevOps is a lot of people like as a religion. It's thou must do things A, B, C, D, and E, and to adhere to the Agile Manifesto, you must do all of these things, and you need to be able to pick and choose the things that are relevant to your business. And I would say that just empowering people is great, but it's not enough. Sometimes you need someone to make a decision, and if you ask 10 techies the right way to do something, you're going to get 10 different answers, and you get paralysis by analysis. And at some point, you need someone just to go, look, come on, let's try it, let's move forward. And it's okay to make a decision and fail and learn from it. It's not okay to just not move forward because you can't make a decision. So I think that's a hard balancing act to make. I don't always get it right myself, but I think if you want to actually move forward, you need someone to sign point where you're going, drive the team to get there. Don't micromanage them, but you also need to keep them on target and go, look, guys, you're not making fast enough. Come on, let's get back on track. So I think that's just a bit of experience to navigate where that line is.
And I think that takes experience to understand sort of when to use the carrot and when to use the stick, if you will.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect to it too, and that is, within IT development teams, there's that shiny trinket syndrome where, everybody wants to use the new cool, whether it's the new cool language or the new cool platform or tool, and to use something cool for coolness sake alone is often not the right choice. And you made an analogy to parenting. Sometimes you got to stand up and be the parent, not the friend.
Yep.
And make those hard choices where, it may not be popular, it may not be the cool thing to do, but you had to do it for the good of the business.
Yep.
It was the right choice. And, that could be resented by the team.
Yeah, of course it can. Yeah, but that's as a CTO, it's absolutely my job to do that. So again, it's where do you empower them, let them do things. But it's back to the why question. So you can use a new tool if you can tell me what business benefit it's going to bring, what's the ROI, how are you going to roll it out? Are you choosing a tool for you or is this the whole company? What does that mean from our total cost of ownership? All the boring manager questions, if you relay that back into the context of, look, this is what I have to then go and explain out to the business, our costs go through the roof because you've chosen 8 different tools to do the same thing. That's not a conversation I want to have. So once they start to understand some of those challenges, they might make better informed decisions.
I mean, we just discussed this in the last panel in terms of translating a lot of our tech talk to business talk. And even if you want to just use the tool just for you, and the party says, well, okay, if you want to use it just for you, run with it if it works for you. But at some point, if we allow everyone to do that, we have dozens of different tools, and now we can't, when we seek to do, that's fine when you're doing DevOps in bubbles.
Yeah.
Excuse me, or small team like that. When you seek to do DevOps across the enterprise at scale, you can't have 100 different tools or even a dozen different tools for the same task.
And you never get economies of scale. You're never going to get continuous learning because if you're all doing different things differently, then you're never going to get that. I think it's even harder in a federated business like ours. So if you've federated out dev teams, test, they sit in individual business units, they're going to want to use their own tools and whatever else. And I think it's okay maybe to have, I like the idea of having centres of practice and centres of excellence that help standardise a set of tool sets, or maybe go like you've got one set of tools for Java, one for .NET, and you can have a couple that roughly do the same thing. But then that's it, and they help roll out those best practices to those different teams. And I think if you can just lower the cost of entry, make it so easy to use a set of tools and set of platforms, then teams typically don't go and use something else because I've got this already, here's design patterns and how to use it. It's already gone through compliance, blah, 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 blah. You just take that off the table. And actually, if they do want to use something else, then you roll that into the platform because maybe it's got something that your platform doesn't have now, and just manage it that way.
But if it's accretive like that, where it adds something that you don't have now, well, that sounds great, right? Yeah. Let me give you one of the other, I think it was a speaker here today that we interviewed, talking about at their organization, they have this concept of marrying sort of DevOps masters with DevOps apprentices, if you will, and building on tribal knowledge, building the tribal knowledge for the organization. And what do you think about that as a model for, as a DevOps leader, you encourage that type of?
Yeah, I really like communities of practice. So when you've got, so we're really pushing Agile, we're really pushing self-organised teams. There might be a combination of, so for infrastructure, for example, in our infrastructure agile teams, it's a server guy, a database guy, a network guy, blah, blah, blah. So they used to being group-wide. Everyone was in the network team, everyone in the server team. So we've changed the focus of them. So they're sort of deep in knowledge, but narrow in terms of the number of people that are in it. But you still need to keep that connection going, so the DBAs aren't doing things in 8 different ways. So what we've done is kind of Spotify-esque, is create a community around those things, and they share best practice and knowledge and that kind of stuff. And we have, so that all of the infrastructure team sits with the head of our infrastructure team. All of the sort of best practice tribe leaders as well, they report to me. So what we're trying to do, where's the vision? Just that person is solely dedicated to advancing that and facilitating that conversation. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So people actively need to be promoted into like your tribe or your data meeting is really important. It's not your reporting line meeting, but your peers as database admins, you still need to kind of have that conversation and talk together. So I think that's a really good model for promoting sort of knowledge and sharing without going back to sort of monolithic silos teams.
Got it. So here's an interesting, we hear it does UK. This is the 3rd year for does UK, I believe. 4 done over in the US. And one of the great pluses why people come is the idea for people like yourself, DevOps leaders, to share not just that we all have our internal experiences that we live in day to day, but the idea of being able to share emerging best practices in leadership across with your peers in other organizations, whether they may be competitive in the marketplace or not, right? How much do you as a DevOps leader learn from events like this, from the ability to peer-to-peer with, learn, network with your peers?
I don't think it's like fundamental, that's going to radically change my thinking. It might be a phrase that I might pick up, and I've been trying to explain that to the business, and I couldn't think of an eloquent way of explaining it. I go nick that and go, right, that's something. But mostly the thing I get from it is kind of having my arse kicked a bit. It's seeing other companies who are doing things better than we are and are sort of describing the journey better we are, and I love being that stupidest person in the room.
Right,
and, that kind of gives me a kick up to go back and go, right, we can do better and we can do more, and that's really what I get from it, actually. It's just there are a lot more intelligent people than me and doing amazing things, and it's kind of that, I find that quite inspiring.
Me too. And I often tell people I enjoy being the stupidest person at the table and just listening. Jonathan, let me turn this another area I wanted to touch on, and that is something that we still get at DevOps.com from a lot of people. They might be a CTO of a smaller organization or a larger organization or a CIO or even a VP level. And that is, look, they get it. They think they get it. They want to get DevOps going at their organization. They're just not sure where to start. What advice would you give them?
My advice, well, what's worked for me isn't what will work for everyone else, first of all, but what worked for me is I didn't start in a leadership position. I was more sort of middle management position, but was trying to persuade a team or a business project to take a risk on this new way of working, and then growing the success and shout about it and evangelising it. Although most people say start small because you can learn mistakes. Your sort of blast radius, if it goes wrong, is quite short. But we went really big, so we went with a really big business critical project, largely because we couldn't think of any other way of how to do it, right, without sort of getting that fast feedback and the automation and stuff. It was like, how are we going to do this? So that created noise and excitement, and people started to understand what the words mean and the RI that was attached to it, and we just did a lot of internal lunch and learns and presentations about what we've done, and it could be used elsewhere, and then it starts to get momentum, and that's how you would grow it, is just find something that you can anchor on, make a success, and then shout about it. But there's loads of things maybe I'd have done differently at the time had I gone back, and I'd have talked to a lot more leaders about how to influence change through an organisation, and how do you get access to the people, decision makers, that the diaries are full to 9 till 6. Do you get one stab at it to go and have that conversation? What happens if you need to go, I've tried plan A, how do how do B, C, D, and E work, right? And how do I have that conversation? How do I, someone that's adept at that influencing piece and that can really find different ways of getting your message across. If you can't get access to them, then what do you do? Just some little tips to help me on that journey. But it's not one rule for everything. But I would say just success builds success, and then it actually becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Then you can't keep up. So if I, as an example, our cloud team at the moment, we started, again, very small. We took like an isolated business case of moving applications into Microsoft Azure, infrastructure as code, all very modern ways of doing stuff. And that snowballed from success and business value that's got out the back of it and the speed that they can do stuff and all the kind of capabilities we can never do on premise, we now can do. But now there's a tidal wave of, I want to do that as well. There's too much demand to keep up with, but that's a nicer problem to have than no one wants in the first place.
I agree with you. It is a nice problem to have. But I think part of that also goes to, again, DevOps or no DevOps, every effective leader I've ever worked with or for was really good at prioritizing, right? And I think in DevOps that may even be doubly so, as you're even mentioning, which is there's always going to be more things to do than you can do. The idea is, how do you prioritize them? How do you schedule them in such a way that, you know, you're making that continuous improvement, taking feedback, reprioritizing, and doing that? I think in a lot of ways that's, you know, a huge part of the leadership issue, you know, job.
Do you know what? You're probably right. I'm a horrible prioritizer.
Are you?
Yeah, probably. I try and please everyone.
Well, you're a pleaser. That's the whole other personality trait, like the people pleaser. You know, I was the pleaser when I was younger in my career. Yeah. And I don't mean not just running dev teams. I'm talking about just even being a CEO at MediaOps, company behind, you know, DevOps and Security Boulevard, all my properties. I have learned that you can't please everyone all the time, and when you try to please everyone and then you disappoint someone, it hurts 3 times as bad.
Yeah, but you know, I think the way that I approach it really is almost it's not my decision to make a lot of these. So we're a federated business. We've got multiple business units. Like, you guys have the conversation. You tell me what, from a business point of view, you are the ones that talk out to the business. You tell me what their priority is, and you talk amongst yourself, and you tell me what the priority is. Because I'm delivering services out to them, what's going to impact your business, and just switch the conversation, because it's kind of not for me to say what your priorities are as a business.
Well, so you're from, that's the school of, look, you're my customer and I'm going to do what the customer says. Yeah. But the flip side is you will have multiple customers pulling at you from different directions, and you have finite resources. Yeah. And then someone has to say... Yeah,
which I do, but I just... Some of that, if you can get your customers prioritise amongst themselves, that goes a long way. But philosophically, I don't like prioritising, because if there's a business appetite for something, we should be able to cope with that business appetite. Otherwise, all we're doing is either letting the business down or constraining growth. So I don't like saying no. I know sometimes you need to, but how can we better increase the throughput or the size of the team to meet that opportunity? It's ironic in Hiscox, we've almost got, there's so much transformation and investment happening that's almost like a curse, right? There's this kind of, all this money for transformation swishing around, but we haven't got enough people, we haven't got enough resources. I'm always going to be a single point of failure and bottleneck myself. So how can I construct the beast underneath it to meet that? And I think that's really what DevOps is trying to achieve, is like, how can you do so much more with the same? And that's where the maturity is, rather than going, look, we're just turning stuff away all the time. It feels wrong to me.
So you just said on something fundamental, and I'm sorry we're taking so much time,
that's
but
right.
You're bringing up things that I've always, I'd like to explore, which is, one of them is, so fundamentally with DevOps, right, we try to say, okay, let's bite-size this, right?
Yep.
That's part of the agile stuff too, right? We're going to do a lot of small releases, a lot of continuous improvement, a lot of continuous stuff. But there comes points where just some things don't lend themselves well to bite-sized chunks. They're just, no matter how you slice and dice it, it's a big job.
Yeah.
And so how do we fit that into our stream, if you will, right? Of, hey, this isn't going to be easy and it's not going to be quick.
Yeah. Well, there's a place for waterfall, is one answer. Mm-hmm. So I'm not a purist where everything has to be agile. Try building an office using agile. Just
doesn't
work, right? So it's the right tools for the right thing and just be pragmatic around it. What I've typically seen with some of the things we've done is if there is a hard to break down something, is maybe spinning off a separate team to manage that, and don't try and run really long burning at the same time as small incremental change, because they're not very compatible. So separate those two teams and have them responsible for different things.
I think that's real leadership in action, right? Knowing when to do that and how to do it is very important. It reminds me an old joke I once heard. A woman calls a plumber because her heat's not working, and the plumber comes over, takes a look, and he takes out a pipe and he smacks the pipe, and boom, the steam starts working. Literally 10 seconds. The woman says, "Thank you very much. What do I owe you?" And the plumber says, $250. And the woman says, $250? It took you 10 seconds. You just banged the pipe once. And the plumber says, well, banging the pipe was free. Knowing where to bang the pipe and then I had to bang the pipe was $250.
Yes.
And it's the same thing here in leadership, right? It's knowing when to peel something off like that. It's knowing when. Sometimes you do have to say no, right? And that's.
I think you're arguing that I should get a pay rise. I think that's what you're getting at.
If you want to tell them I said so, it's fine. Jonathan Fletcher, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
This is Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, DevOps TV at DevOps Enterprise Summit UK. Have a great day, everyone.